Welcome to the Extreme Underground, the show where I take a look at some of the most disturbing and controversial films in the world of cinema. Today we'll be discussing Aftermath. Written and directed by Nacho Cerda, starring Pep Tosar, Aftermath is a short film wherein a man working in a morgue mutilates and defiles one of the corpses. This concept isn't anything groundbreaking, but it's something that people often think about, especially when you have autopsy scenes in any movie. Basically, there's this lingering thing of like, what happens to your body once you're dead? If you're lying on like an autopsy table, how do they treat the bodies? Like, what happens? And this is exactly what you don't want to see happening. Like I said, it's a short film and we're basically introduced to a couple people working in a morgue. It starts off very typical with just some coroners cutting open a pair of dead bodies, seemingly just doing their job without saying any words. There's no dialogue in this film whatsoever. So you're just watching these people do their work. I mean, it's not a great job, obviously, but this is just something that they are just used to doing. Just like cutting open cadavers, taking out the brain and putting in like some fabric or a towel or something. It's extremely well done when it comes to the practical effects and the dismemberment and mutilation of the bodies. I mean, obviously you wouldn't think of it as mutilation, but we'll get to that afterwards. Once the regular autopsies are done, then we have our main coroner just decide to stay late because he knows there's a new fresh body that came in of a woman named Marta who seemingly died in a car accident caused by a dog running onto the road. Up until this point, the movie is fairly disturbing simply because of the way that the bodies are handled and just seeing how graphic and intense everything is. If you're into gore, you're going to like the practical effects, absolutely. But when we talk about extreme cinema, it goes a little bit further than that usually, and this is where Marta comes into play. Well, Marta's on the table. Things seem to be going just as the other autopsies. The coroner or the mortician, I'm not really sure what this role is. I think it's probably mortician because I don't think they're looking for the cause of death at this point. It looks like they're preparing the bodies for burial or for a funeral or something, just because of the way that they are removing the organs and everything. So anyway, things are going well with Marta, and then things take a turn, which I'm sure most people would guess, as things become more sexual and we explore necrophilia. It starts off with our mortician taking a knife and viciously ramming it inside of the woman. This alone is a very intense scene, simply because of how much he doesn't care for this woman, and he's just being super brutal with it, and he's also getting turned on at the same time, in which he starts touching himself. As I'm describing this, I'm more and more like awkward because this is pretty fucking disturbing when you actually talk about it. I mean, sure, to watch it is one thing, but then to discuss it and explain what's happening, especially for those who may not have seen the movie and just want to know about it, it's weird for me. After the knife is down and the self-gratification is complete, he lubes up his fingers and continues to touch the woman. He's increasingly stimulated. He gets a camera, he props it up so that he can take pictures of himself while he climbs onto her and has sex with a dead body. I know it's a punchline that you see coming from afar because it's on the front cover. If you see a horror movie that usually takes place in a morgue, other than like Autopsy of Jane Doe, you know what's gonna happen. There's gonna be some kind of touching of a dead body. I think the most similar is The Corpse of Anna Fritz, which is also a pretty cool movie. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It has a couple twists and there's more character development in that. But in this one, I admittedly didn't like it the first time I watched it. I've seen it a few times now, various points where I was going to record a video and I just opted not to because we generally don't talk about short films because the amount of time that goes into talking about them, you may as well just watch it yourself. But at the same time, this is one of those movies that you might not have access to or the desire to actually watch in full for yourself, thus you're watching this video. What makes this movie disturbing, aside from the necrophilia itself, is how nonchalant it is, how routine it seems, because nothing seems like this hasn't been done before, and that's what's scariest. People have this kind of worry, like, are the bodies going to be treated well? And you're just hoping for the best because often, if you care, this is a loved one. And we can assume Marta's loved ones are the ones that we see at the beginning of the film. So to know that what's happening downstairs, they don't care about human life at this point. They're just doing their job at first, and then they're just doing whatever the hell they want with them. And why I think this is like routine is you can kind of see the motions that our mortician goes into as like once he's finished, he gets off the body, he throws all the organs into the stomach, sews it up, and takes a heart home to blend and feed to his dog. It seems like it's something that has been done before and probably happens more often than not. And the fact that there's no talking, there's not really much going on. It's just a very desolate, isolated place. The camera has a lot of like wide shots so you can see everything. You can see the whole room and you can see how alone they are. How it's this guy and this body and this is what he decides to do with it. And for that reason, it's quite disturbing. He's basically emotionless. He's just doing this because he wants to. And he's not thinking of Marta as a person anymore. He's just thinking of her as a sexual tool for him to use. And that's what's fucking disgusting about this. It's also worth mentioning that the sound design helps add another layer to this whole film because it's so gross. Because while all these like guts are being played with, you can really like hear it all. And when the defiling happens and some of it is off screen, but you know what's happening and you hear those sound effects, it really drives the point home of how vicious this is. It's hard to pinpoint what I didn't like about this movie, and that's simply because of the delivery. It's only half an hour, there's not much of a story, and the reason why I like it is because there is no story. As far as presenting basically an unfiltered look at necrophilia in a morgue, this does a great job. So while I don't necessarily have one specific dislike, I also don't think it's the best movie, so I'm not gonna give it a 5 out of 5 or anything, but it is what it is. It exists for a very specific audience that wants to be, like, kind of push themselves to the limit of how much can I handle? Because the gore is really realistic, there are disgusting actions in it, and it's probably the most realistic necrophilia type scene that I've ever seen. So for that, that's like their whole point. So they nailed that aspect. But again, it's not like a movie you can just recommend to anyone, especially it's like, hey, horror fans, you gotta check this out. They're gonna think you're the weird one. And like I said, when trying to explain this, it's awkward in itself just talking about, which means it was effective and it nailed the aspects that it tried to. So the best parts are absolutely that there is no story, something that I faulted this movie long ago because I wanted to know more, but the fact that it's just so routine and it's emotionless and there's no remorse for how he's treating these bodies, that's what makes this so fucked up. And so I'm gonna give this 3.5 crosses out of 5. As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, links are in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything Bloodbath and beyond.